Do you wish to
Very
respond,
obviously.
Senator?
Yes, I do. First of all, in terms of the ability to run an office, we represent 350,000 people. I represent 350,000 people. We've spoken a lot about Yonkers, but as we know, the district goes far beyond that. The reality is that the expenses of my office are 50% of my predecessor's expenses, and that is factual. So frankly, I have saved the taxpayer money. That's the reality. In terms of the communications, we are entitled to communication. We must communicate with our constituents. There are formats and time frames, and everything that is done within the specifications of the Senate's laws. There is nothing that has gone wrong at all. In terms of, I'm glad your mom had somebody to say happy birthday to her. You would be amazed in this informative card that says happy birthday, how many seniors have come up and said, thank you, because A, I've gotten information that I didn't have, and B, you're the only one that did it. So it does not go to everyone, but it is an informative piece of literature. I ride my own car, drive my own car, and I know you had a city-paid car for 10 years. I have expenses when I arrive in a city where I don't live, and those are the realities of doing business on a daily basis. But again, we're talking about budgets, etc. The balanced budget that you're calling for, you when you were in city government, obviously, not a lot of difference between what you have done and what you're accusing me of doing.
Okay. First of all, a belated happy birthday.
Not a thing.
Can I just address one of those
Well,
points?
if you can, but I promise you there wasn't just the softball. There comes the second part. And certainly the voter dissatisfaction, as I indicated in the poll out there, for your opponent and other incumbents out there in this election season. But there's also been a lot of anger. And let's just use the state of New York and even this district. And the Republican candidate for Congress right now in the district of which we're broadcasting from recently had anti-Semitic, racist comments attributed to him. Carl Palladino, there's been both, again, emails that many have found offensive, that he turned funny, and there's been questions surrounding even his tone deafness in certain parts of the community. But the one commonality is there's anger out there. How much do you think, and how much do you want to distance yourselves from A, the Republican candidate for Congress in the Westchester District, but also, where do you stand with Carl Palladino? What kind of a Republican are you, and how do you view yourselves compared to these two men?
Sure. And I'm happy to address that. I just want to say one quick thing. You know, it's funny. I was at a dinner on Sunday, and one of those seniors did say to me how she had received your card and she thought it was so nice and this and that. And I said to her, did you know that that was paid for by the taxpayers of the state? And she says, you know, I never thought of that. So upon reflection, she was offended by the fact that if you want to send somebody a birthday card, that you should send it and pay for it yourself. So maybe some of these people didn't quite understand that this is government, propaganda. To your question, there is a lot of anger out there. There's no doubt about it. As for candidates like Jim Russell, I've read his comments. I found them completely offensive, and so I in no way agree with any of them. The Republican Party is trying to drop him as a candidate. I don't think legally they're able to do so, but I wish they could, because there's no room in our society for those types of comments. As for Mr. Palladino, I've never met the guy. He seems like an interesting person.
He's at the top of your ticket.
He is the top of my ticket, And listen, there's a lot that could be said of Andrew Cuomo before his kind of remake now, and the softer, gentler.
Nice try. I'm asking about Palladino.
No. I'll get there. I'll get there. So to your point, there are flaws, maybe I think, with the top of the ticket on both sides. As for Mr. Palladino, though, I think the one thing that we do share is an anger and upsetment at Albany, at the way things are going, at the dysfunction that's going on there, at the blatant campaigning at taxpayer expense, things like that. I'm not looking to bring a baseball bat, but I think we do share that anger.
Thank you.
Senator, earlier you mentioned the New York State Commission on Local Government Efficiency, and certainly talking to business people, that's one thing that I hear over and over, calls for a more streamlined, more affordable, and more accountable state government. New York State has thousands of taxing entities, as you know, where the average state has only about 200. As the chairwoman of the local government committee in the state Senate, what steps have you taken to implement the recommendations of the New York State's Commission report, which we have here, toward consolidation and reduction of local taxing authorities?
Well, that's exactly what I did. We passed legislation that would allow for the consolidation of a variety of districts, municipalities, because you're right, there are over 10,000 taxing units. Attorney General Andrew Cuomo had pushed this forward, and I carried it in the legislature. I carried it so that communities would be able to look at, I mean, there's some communities in Long Island that have escalator districts. There are communities that, again, in Long Island, that the water meter reader got $98,000 to do that job annually. So there needed to be a way for the constituents of these communities to take a look at these things and consolidate it. My consolidation bill does that. And not only does it do that, but it allowed for the very first time, because again, people have no idea how dysfunctional Albany has been. And I was the first chair to invite the ranker, which is the Republican counterpart on my committee, to co-sponsor this piece of legislation. The first, historically, to do that. And we passed it in a bipartisan way. It passed in the Assembly, and it now allows for municipalities and for grassroots people to take control. So I've certainly done that. I've authored shared services legislation that has passed, and I'm also on a task force that streamlines government.
Senator, I do need to clarify this, though, because I've heard some complaints about that plan that lets municipalities hold referendums. One of the defects in that is that before they vote on this, there is not a plan in place for what's going to happen next. So they would vote on a consolidation or to dissolve their municipality, but they don't know what's going to happen next. So could you talk about that, and have there been any votes thus far, and has anyone voted yes on that?
Well, yeah, there are districts that are looking at consolidations in different ways. What people have to know is that both entities, whoever is involved in the proposed consolidation, they have to agree, and they have to agree more than 50%. So there has to be a majority in both areas, hypothetically, that would agree. We had a long discussion about that. Do you put out a plan, and which is very costly, develop a plan, and then work from there, or do you put out the idea of how does this feel to the people in general? And if you have more than 50% in two places that would conceivably consolidate or merge, chances are then they are willing to do it. So it was a discussion. We are trying to see how it plays out because it was a huge piece of legislation. And the agreement is that obviously, like anything else, laws can be amended, but at this point, it seems to be working. I know I had a lot of fire districts that were very afraid that they would all be taken away, and the reality is that people like their fire districts.
Have any municipalities voted for that?
Yes, upstate they have. Yeah, they have been, yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. McLaughlin.